And ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, welcome to TV Courtroom with yours truly, attorney Michael Cord, aka Michael X, aka the angriest black man in America. We're going to have a powerful show today. It's actually two topics. One is going to deal with the issue of socialism versus capitalism. And then the second part of the show will focus on something completely separate, dealing with the school district of Philadelphia. And the guest in that second segment, dealing with the school district of Philadelphia, is none other than Dana Carter. So in about 20, 25 minutes or so, we'll hear from her. But right now, I wanted to start today's show because of the recent strike. And I don't want to go into detail about the strike that took place and how it ended just a couple days ago. If we have time, I might get into it. But that's just the microcosm. The macrocosm, the big picture, is the issue of socialism versus capitalism. Now, it's really interesting. I love my socialist slash communistic comrades, but also I am not going to say I hate a certain thing, but I really dislike a certain thing, and that's the factions amongst the left. In particular, when you talk about communism, you're talking about Marxism, you're talking about Leninism, you're talking about Trotskyism, you're talking about Stalinism, you're talking about Maoism, and these factions fight so much against each other far too often that they never come together to battle capitalism. So, what I want to do is, I want to take an approach of a more general confrontation. And that more general confrontation is simply socialism versus capitalism. Now, without getting too technical and too nerdy, and even too nuanced, because there are nuances when you define capitalism and define socialism and define communism. So I just want to give the basics. We don't have time in 20, 25 minutes to go into the technicalities and the nuances. So I just want to give you an overall picture. And if you don't remember anything else I say about this, remember this: socialism is good and capitalism is bad. I guess we can stop the show right there because that's what it's all about. And it's so funny because you hear these ignorant folks on radio and TV, right wing, all Republicans, almost all, and they condemn this socialism like it's a contagious disease. I saw a great clip on social media recently where a comedian who was acting as a news correspondent went to a MAGA rally. And he had a big microphone, had a suit and tie on as if he was a news correspondent. Just, asked the folks there on the right what they were protesting about. And they said that we oppose the Democrats and their socialism. So the correspondent slash comedian, undercover comedian, said, yeah, I hear what you're saying, and there might be some merit to your argument. But first tell me, when you say you hate socialism, what is socialism? And you talk about some of the dumbest responses in the world. They had no idea what socialism was, but they hated it. Why? Because America, through its so-called educational system and the American media, they brainwash people into undermining their own interest. When you get people to go against and vote against their own interests, that's truly brainwashing. In fact, I really shouldn't call it brainwashing because these people should have their brains washed. Right now, their brain is polluted. So the American media and the American educational system has brain polluted these people into making them vote against their own interest when they say they despise socialism and when they uphold capitalism. So I started out by saying that the basic definition or the basic understanding of what I'm going to articulate today is that in the broad picture, socialism good, capitalism bad. Now, having said that, let me go into a little more detail by defining each of them. Socialism is a political and economic system that promotes people over profit. Write that down. Socialism is an economic and political system that promotes people over profit. On the other hand, capitalism does the exact opposite. Capitalism it's an economic and political system that promotes profit over people. A wise man said centuries ago something that still resounds today. He said that slavery is the highest form of capitalism. Slavery is the highest form of capitalism. And it actually is, because if you think about it, slavery is based on maximum profit, minimum expense. Maximum profit, get as much as you can from these black people until they literally die in the cotton fields. Minimum expense, no health care, no lunch breaks, no vacation, none of that stuff. So you put nothing into the worker, but you take everything from the worker. So the mantra that slavery is the highest form of capitalism is so true, because capitalism is all about maximizing profits. If you are a Fortune 500 company and you made $100 million profit last year in 2024, but here in 2025, you quote unquote only make 99 million. Well, you failed as a capitalist, because you have to maximize profits. If it was 100 million last year, it's got to be 105 million this year, 110 million this year. It's all about pulling and draining and exploiting from the worker as much as you can until he, she, or they are dead. Now, I'm going to talk a little more about this, but I want to define in broad terms socialism as I did, capitalism as I did. But let me throw in communism. Some argue that communism is a step beyond socialism, that it ultimately seeks a classless society, that socialism doesn't, and it ultimately seeks the common ownership. And that's where you get into the gray area between socialism and communism. But without getting too technical, without getting too nuanced, socialism, again, is all about people over profit. Communism is that also, but it ultimately seeks a classless society. And I know many of you watching are saying, well, look at all these communist countries that have been so horrible in the past. Look at all these socialist countries that have been so horrible in the past. Look at all these capitalist countries that have been so great in the past. Well, all these great capitalist empires have not been great in the past. They've been brutal. They've been horrible. They've been horrific. They have promoted nothing but suffering and exploitation. That's the essence of capitalism. So when I started the show, I alluded to the strike that took place. And that's why it's so important that you support unions. And as a black man, that's a little difficult for me, because I love the class consciousness of unions. So when I saw the blue collar workers, the sanitation workers, the 911 workers, and the other municipal employees going on strike against the city, I supported them, as I support every strike. But I also have to understand and let people know that, as great as the concept of unionism is, there's a horrific history of racism in the past among unions, and even today among unions. That's why when we talk about America, we have to talk about racism and classism. But despite the flaws, the racist flaws of many unions, unions are always better than non-unions, because capitalists throughout history, I was about to say world history, but correction, I was about to say American history, but correction, throughout world history, capitalists coming from Europe have not only been classist, exploiting, but they've been racist. Look at what they've done in Africa. Look at what they've done in Asia. Look at what they've done in Australia. But I don't want to get distracted right now. The legitimate complaints, the legitimate criticisms I have about unions pale in comparison to the awesome, in a negative way, awesome critiques that I have of capitalism. Um, when people ask me, well, if you're talking about socialism and if it's so good, where has it worked? Well, I'll tell you where it's worked. As a black man, I'm always starting at the beginning, and the beginning is Africa. Socialism worked in Tanzania under Nyerere. Google it. Socialism worked in Ghana under Nkrumah. Socialism worked in Senegal under Senghor. Now, of course, they all of these countries I just mentioned, whether it's Tanzania or Ghana or Senegal, they were undermined by capitalists from without and traitorous black capitalists from within. But the planning, the strategy, the system, the structure in each of those three countries and others is what socialism is all about. And by the way, it's really interesting because many people think the concept of socialism and communism came out of Europe. It did not. You know, we in Africa, we called it communalism, where it was all about the community, it was all about the village. And then when Europeans got involved, I mean, people like Marx and a great man and Lenin and Trotsky and the rest of them, they did their thing, but they were coming from a Eurocentric approach, a great approach, but Eurocentric and not necessarily African centered. So that's why when I talk about socialism, when I talk about communalism, I'm talking about the African model. I'm talking about Tanzania. I'm talking about Ghana. I'm talking about Senegal. And under those three leaders I mentioned, that system works. And closer to home, we got Fidel Castro in Cuba. And people say, well, he was a dictator. Damn it, what was he supposed to do when you had brutal, thuggish racists from America 90 miles away that were trying to kill him every single day? Yeah, democracy is a great thing. It's a wonderful thing. But you have to put it all in context. I want everybody in my house to vote on issues like what kind of TV do we get? What kind of family car do we buy? What are we going to have for dinner? Everybody gets input. But if I'm the biggest and strongest person in the house and the house is on fire, then I'm just grabbing whoever I can. I'm making that decision. I'm grabbing folks and saying, you go out first and you go out second, you go out third, because I'm in a position to do so. And the house is on fire, and the arsonists that caused the fire are still out there doing their thing. So, yeah, democracy works when fascists are not there to undermine you. That's why Fidel Castro had to crack down as much as he did. Cuba never tried to attack America, but America tried to assassinate Castro every single day he was in power. If they had left him alone, it would have been a socialist heaven in Cuba for everybody. And even with the problems of the dictatorial nature that did take place to a certain extent in Cuba, the move was for the masses. That's why education went up. Under Batista, who was in power, financed by the American mafia and the American government, under Batista, the people were poor. They were uneducated. They suffered from serious illnesses. Castro comes in and education level shoots up. The healthcare shoots up. The standard of living shoots up. So when we talk about socialism versus capitalism, it's a no-brainer. Now, I gave shout out to those three African countries, Tanzania and Ghana and Senegal, but also I got a big shout out to some European countries. Now, some of these countries might not officially call themselves socialist, but at least they have a socialist underpinning. And by that, I mean a strong safety net in terms of employment and healthcare and education and housing. So I don't care what you call it, a rose by any other name will smell just as sweet. That's why I respect what they've done and are doing in Finland. I respect what they've done and what they are doing in Denmark. That's the step in the right direction. And speaking of European countries, there was, if you talk about one of the greatest concepts of socialism that was implemented in Europe, you got to start with the Paris Commune in 1871. But I have to put a little asterisk there because That system there lasted for about maybe 2.5 months from the beginning of March in 1871 until the end of May in 1871. But for those 2.5 months, it was heaven. But there was a major flaw. And I want to be clear, folks, I do not support dictatorship. I support democracy. But when the house is on fire and the arsonists are still out there throwing bombs at the house, you can't be democratic at that point. You have to do whatever you have to do to save your new system. That's the flaw of the leaders of the Paris Commune in 1871. They allowed certain capitalist structures to remain in power instead of just crushing them as they should have. They were, and I don't mean this in any disrespectful way, but they were too soft. They were too idealistic, and they needed to understand the wickedness of those running the capitalist system in France. They needed to understand what was going on with the Bank of France and how they got their money and their power. But they tried to be quote unquote reasonable. The leaders of the Paris Commune, they let these structures, these systems remain. And after 2.5 months, those systems came back with a vengeance. Although the revolutionaries won that battle to create the Paris Commune in the middle of March of 1871, they weren't vigilant enough. They should have cracked the whip to keep the oppressor down. Because you know what they say, I actually saw and heard this in the great HBO series, The Game of Thrones. When you come for the king, you best not miss. And they came for the quote unquote king. They didn't miss, but they didn't finish the job. And by not finishing the job, they allowed the capitalist, exploitative, brutal system to be wounded instead of destroyed. And that wounded system, 2.5 months later, regrouped, and the whole concept of the Paris Commune was gone forever. But folks who really want to know how a system could work, a European system could work in terms of the planning, the ideology, the concept, do some research on the Paris Commune. Um, Having said that, it's funny because when we talk about socialism and capitalism in America, many people think that capitalism is good and socialism is bad. And on my social media page, and I encourage people to go to my Instagram page and my Facebook page and my Twitter/X page and see something that I posted a few days ago. And when I first read it about a week ago, I thought it was hilarious, but it was historically accurate. Here's what it said, quote, socialism doesn't mean taking wealth from those who work hard and giving it to those who don't. You're thinking about capitalism. Let me repeat that. Socialism doesn't mean taking wealth from those who work hard and giving it to those who don't. You're thinking about capitalism. So people who are ignorant about socialism, they think it's just based on handouts to the poor, and these are lazy people, and they do nothing to promote the economy, do nothing for the system. So to hell with those poor people. But the weird thing in America is that there is socialism in America, but it's not for the masses. It's socialism for the 1%, socialism for corporate America. Look at all the corporate bailouts that have taken place, where the US government gives millions, actually billions of dollars to private corporations. And I shouldn't say the American government gives them billions. It's you and me, it's the taxpayers. We pay for the socialism of the 1%, of those multi-billion-dollar corporations. It's actually corporate welfare. It's actually socialism for corporations. And the American government, Republican leaders and Democrat leaders alike, they say, well, we're doing this because these corporations are too big to fail. They say we're doing it because when they succeed, we all succeed based on trickle down economics. But that's garbage. That money from us taxpayers that, for example, in 2008, that went to AIG. In that same year, billions went to Citigroup. A year later, 2009, there was GM and Chrysler, and they're getting these billions of dollars from you and me. to take care of them because they couldn't make it in their own capitalist structure. So we give billions to them, but won't give a dime to the poor. So, yeah, everybody realizes that helping those in need is always a good thing. But the debate comes up when you ask, well, who's in need? The capitalists will say, we're in need. The masses will say, no, you can't be in need. And the reason why you can't be in need is because your CEOs, they make $50 million a year, $100 million a year. Whereas the workers, lucky if they get $30,000 to $40,000 a year. So, and I wish, and again, I want to say this before I wrap this part up. I wish that all Americans understood the virtue of socialism and the inherent wickedness of capitalism. Because as I said at the outset, socialism is people over profit. That's always a good thing. Capitalism is profit over people. That's why when you look at slavery and what it was about, slavery is actually the highest form of capitalism because that's the total maximization of profit, how much money you make, and the minimization of expense, how much you pay the worker. Well, the last time I checked, enslaved blacks in America didn't get paid a dime. Um, Final thing I want to say is, in addition to the 1% promoting the notion of capitalism being great and socialism being evil, you even have the masses, the poor people in the hood who aspire to be capitalists, who promote many rappers in the late 80s and 90s and even 2000s. They praised Orange Hitler, aka Donald Trump, because he was a self-made man who made millions. No, that's not true. His father gave him a bunch of money and he squandered it. But through government bailouts and other nonsense, he was able to be where he is. That's why I love what the Black Panther Party did in the late 60s, early 70s, when they would have these food programs, when they would have these healthcare programs, when they would have these school programs. They wouldn't just go into the hood and give stuff away. They would have what I call enlightenment sessions. What's an enlightenment session? It's where we bring folks in from the hood who are hungry, nothing to eat. And as we're giving them the food, we explain to them why they're hungry, why they don't have a job, why they don't have an education. We explain to them that it looks good when these big nonprofits have these charity programs, but these charity programs are nothing but a damn Band-Aid on a cancerous wound. That's exactly what charity is. It's a Band-Aid on a cancerous wound. The focus should be surgery where you cut the cancer out instead of just getting a Band-Aid to cover up the cancerous lesion. So giving charity in a capitalist economy is like putting a Band-Aid on a cancerous lesion because you don't get to the root of the problem. I can give a homeless guy, a houseless guy, I can give him $5. I can give him $10. I can give him $50. But the system that put him and others there remains intact. So it's not about giving that one person $50 or 50 cents. It's about changing the system that put him in that bind. And that's why the Black Panther Party made sure that when they had these quote unquote free programs, free food and free education and free healthcare, that they started out by explaining the hypocrisy and the contradiction and the wickedness of capitalism that made it such that these poor people would have to come to groups like the Black Panther Party and get fed and seek housing and get health care. So many of these big nonprofits simply give a little bit of stuff away. And by the way, still get major tax write-offs. But the Panthers said, no, we want to feed your body and your mind. So you don't just come in here and get a quote unquote handout, you get enlightened. So when I see these rappers from the hood, from the project, talking about all the bling they got, the jewelry, the diamonds, the cars, and then you got the fans of these rappers praising the same system that beats them down. Folks, I got so much more I want to talk about, but obviously I don't have the time. And because I don't have the time, I don't have the time because of a good reason. And that good reason is at about this time, we wanted to bring on somebody who knows more about the Philadelphia school district and its shenanigans than anybody I've ever met. I have a show on the radio, WURD 96.1 FM. And in that WRD show, every Saturday, the show is on between 1 p.m. and 3 p.m. every Saturday, WRD 96.1 FM and 900 AM. And every Saturday at about the last, say, 35, 40 minutes of the show, I bring on Dana Carter. I had her on a couple times, like a regular caller. And just giving her opinion about different topics. And I noticed that every time Dana was on, she would not only provide information that I wasn't aware of, but information that the listening audience wasn't aware of. So I said, hey, Dana, can you come on like maybe once a month? And it got bigger. And now we're doing once a week. And anytime I'm unavailable for the show, I have her sitting in for me. Many of you, anybody who's been on listening to WRD, they know what I'm talking about. Many of you here on the TV Courtroom. They know what I'm talking about because she's been on before. So without further ado, a young lady who is a certified educator and has been certified for the past 20 years or more, is an HBCU grad, holds a master's degree, gets into the John Lewis type of good trouble, and is literally an international activist. Without further ado, folks, Dana Carter. Dana, how are you today?
I am wonderful. Thank you for that amazing introduction. I'm sitting here smiling because I remember when I used to call when I was a teacher. I was a school-based teacher leader at a school in the school district of Philadelphia, and I would call saying, "Dude, you have no idea what happened in this school," and it just reminds me of how green I was, right? Because
Mm.
I really thought that the education system was built to help children and work towards the best interests of children. And when I was in that position, I mean, I had my suspicions earlier, but specifically in that position, I understood that the cards were stacked up against the historically underserved. So I just definitely appreciate Mr. Court giving me that opportunity.
Well,
This is
Dana, let me say this. I appreciate you taking advantage of the opportunity, and I also appreciate our producer extraordinaire, Roland, because I don't even have to turn my camera off. When you start talking, he kind of phased me out and centers you, which is exactly what I wanted. So great job. And Dana, I just want you to start talking about the shenanigans going on at school district. But first, Dana, you as an intelligent, proud, angry Black woman, I'd like to get your take for the first 3, 4 minutes about the horrific misogyny from the Black male demographic toward all women, including and especially Black women, because neither you nor I were fans of Madam Vice President Kamala Harris, but we respected her. Not fans
absolutely.
of Mayor Sherelle Parker, but respected her, their intellect, the fact that they've been involved in politics and navigated that system. We might not vote for them, or if we do vote for them, we might hold our nose and vote because the alternative is worse. But we're not going to attack their looks, their weight, their intellect. What is that about amongst Black men? And I'm not talking about all Black men. I'm not talking about most Black men. I'm talking about too many. For example, the 33% of Black men under 45 who voted for Donald Trump. Dana, the show is yours.
I definitely think that at the root of that, there are some men generally, but specifically Black men who just don't like women. And I'm not saying that these men are gay. I'm not saying that, they're bisexual or they are not sexually attracted to women, but they don't like women. And it is reflective in how they treat women, in their speech about women. And as we saw with Mayor Parker, how they convey their dislike for the position of that specific person. So I am actually still trying to process what happened last week. You know what I mean? In terms of the ad hominem attacks that were targeted against Mayor Parker. I don't understand if people were that dissatisfied with the contract. If you are engaging in this behavior because you don't like the contract or you don't like the offer, then you should have more than enough ammunition to just write about what you don't like about the contract. Why engage in those attacks about how somebody looks or dresses or any of that type of stuff in order to prove your point. What you are doing, what is an unintended result, is that you are diminishing the support for DC 33. And I'm saying, like, these are people support unions, and people understand that people need a living wage and all that type of good stuff. Right. We do. We understand that, and we support that. We support unions. But the minute you take the conversation away from the contract and you start insulting the people, that is the minute where you start to lose support for your cause. So let me just go a little bit deeper into that. Like, I'm going to spend maybe about 2 or 3 minutes on this DC 33 thing, and then I'm going to get into school district of Philadelphia issues. But before that, I would just like to give my little input about capitalism that Mr. Court was talking about. I love that, about, how, we all are suffering as a result of capitalism. And I just would like for people to examine the position of rappers or hip hop, right, as it relates to capitalism. And we do understand that rappers promote capitalism, right? But more importantly than that, the record labels that seek these rappers intentionally pick the people um who are rapping about death and destruction in the Black community, who are rapping about taking heavy drugs, who are rapping about, not being the best version of yourselves, right? It seems that the record companies intentionally seek out and uplift these individuals in my opinion, in order to promote death and destruction in the Black neighborhood. So in addition to capitalism being unfair and not being for the people, in my opinion, capitalism also leads to death and destruction in the Black community or in underserved communities, period. All right. Anyway, so the DC 33 strike was very nasty. It didn't take long for people to show their true colors. And what I'm referring to is those racist and misogynist comments that were made about Mayor Parker when people were trying to support DC 33 and express their dislike for the terms that the mayor was offering. But let me just give you all a little bit of background. I'm just going to spend a few minutes talking about contract law. Interestingly enough, I do have a master's degree in education and all that type of good stuff, but my bachelor's degree is in business administration. And I went to Delaware State University, and I'm telling you, back then, Del State had a stellar business administration program. We spent a lot of time in my program at Del State talking about business law and specifically contract law. So I just want to go over really quickly about a collective bargaining agreement because it ties in nicely to what I'm going to speak about later on in the show, and that is the upcoming negotiations with the Philadelphia Federation of Teachers, CASA, in the School District of Philadelphia. All right. So a collective bargaining agreement is an agreement, a contract that is entered between representatives or members of a union and their employer. The contract has to be agreed upon. Why am I highlighting that? The DC 33 executive board voted 25-1 to approve or to move forward with the contract proposal, the contract that was proposed by the city of Philadelphia. That was just the executive board. But in order to ratify that contract or quote unquote approve the contract, the members have to vote. And that will happen next week. I think it's important to bring that up because I see a lot of people, they probably aren't members of DC 33 or maybe not in the union, and they are expressing their dislike for the terms that were negotiated between the union and the city. And so my response to that is for people to understand that if the members of DC 33 do not agree or do not like this proposed collective bargaining agreement, they can vote no. And it takes 51%, right? Just like, the majority, 51% or over 50%, right? Maybe 50.1% of the voting body, the voting members, to vote down this particular collective bargaining agreement. But that's all they need. And then they will go back, right, to the negotiating table and renegotiate the things that they don't agree with and all that other type of good stuff. But I just ask individuals, DC 33 and their supporters, that if that does come to fruition, if it is if next week the members of DC 33 decide to vote down the proposed contract, in your advocacy for your union, stick to the contract, right? You have enough ammunition, you could just stick to the terms of the contract when you're writing on your posters, when you are out there at protests. You don't have to fill those posters with ad hominem attacks against Mayor Parker. You could just stick to the contract. And I guarantee you will continue to have support for your cause. All right. So I feel like that nicely ties into my next topic as it directly relates to education in the city of Philadelphia. All right. So the Philadelphia Federation of Teachers, PFT, as well as the Commonwealth Association of School Administrators, CASA. The PFT is the union for teachers and paraprofessionals and some other members, counselors, in the district. CASA is the union for school administrators, I believe also some school police officers and other individuals in the school district. Both of those contracts end August 31st. Both of those contracts in August 31st. So more than likely, the PFT as well as CASA either is in negotiations or will be in negotiations about their contract, their new contract in the next coming weeks. What does that mean for the city of Philadelphia? What does that mean to the school district of Philadelphia, and what does that mean to the students in Philadelphia? Well, in my opinion, I don't believe that the strike is going to happen. Either way. And the reason why is because I kind of look at the school district of Philadelphia and the unions currently, that the way that they operate is, I mean, there's no conflict of interest, but I'm saying that the school district of Philadelphia seems to be a partner with the PFC. The school district of Philadelphia seems to be a partner with CASA. And because that's what I see from the outside, I mean, like a partner, meaning that we are both working towards the best interest of the children. I'm gonna say that for CASA. I don't really know about PFC. Y'all know I got my issues with PFT. I don't really know if this is the proper format to voice my concerns about the PFT, but I'm just speaking about specifically CASA. I know that they are partners with the school district, meaning they work towards the best interest of the people they are supposed to serve, and that would mean the children. So I don't feel like there's going to be negativity or this viciousness that we saw with the DC 33 city. I don't think, first of all, the city is not even involved in this negotiation process. It's solely with the members of the union, the lawyers in the union, and the school district of Philadelphia, and the attorneys who represent the school district of Philadelphia during those negotiations. I don't even think the superintendent or his leadership team are involved in the negotiation process. So I don't think that the teachers or the PF or the school administrators will go on strike. One reason why I strongly believe that the PFT won't go on strike is because you all have to understand, every member, every teacher in the school district of Philadelphia, every counselor in the school district of Philadelphia, every paraprofessional in the school district of Philadelphia, everyone who could be represented by the PFC is not represented by the PFC, because you have the option to join the PFC when you when as a part of your onboarding process when you get the job with the school district. If that is the person, if that is the union that negotiates your collective bargaining agreement, you have that option. You're not automatically enrolled. You can say no. And what I've seen over time is more and more teachers, when they are joining the school district of Philadelphia, are deciding against or to not join the Philadelphia Federation of Teachers. So this is one aspect. This is one reason why I believe that the PFT won't go on strike, because I don't believe the PFT is strong enough to have an effective strike. Why? Remember, I just told you that not every teacher is a member of the PFT. So if the PFT, if the majority of the individuals who vote for the PFT to strike, you have to figure that there's a percentage of teachers who are not members of the PFT who might decide to go into schools, who aren't threatened by the don't cross the picket line. Like the demographics of the PFT have changed tremendously. And back when I was in school, I often talk about the fact that I did not have a white teacher until I got into the fourth grade. All my teachers were Black. But that also could be because my mom was very intentional about putting her children in Black spaces, right? So I did not have a white teacher until I reached the fourth grade. When you look at the school district of Philadelphia's teacher demographics now, I believe it's about 65%, maybe 70% white, right? And not only white people who don't live in the city. So there's a disconnect between the PFT, the teachers, and the community. Now, I know that the PFT definitely is going to have some support from the community because, people really want their children to get educated, but additionally, people don't know what to do, or they won't have anything to do with their children come September, or when school is supposed to start, if they go to work and the children are supposed to be in school during that time. Camp is not going to extend to accommodate the PFT strike. These summer programs are not going to extend to accommodate the PFT strike. Things will go on as normal. So that is one reason why I feel like the community will be in support of the PFC during the negotiating times. But again, I would like to say the demographics of the PFC have changed. Sometimes parents, students have their own personal reasons for it, and also teachers have their own personal reasons as to why they don't support the PFC. Philadelphia has an interesting educational landscape, and we have a lot of charter schools, right? And so one unintended consequence of the PFC, some brilliant person brought this to my attention yesterday. One unintended consequence of the PFC going on strike, if they choose to do so, which I doubt, is that the school district of Philadelphia will lose thousands of children, more children, to charter schools, because they're not going on strike. They're up and running. They're rocking and rolling. Their teachers aren't going to strike because they're not unionized. And so the strike, or the threat to strike, might frighten so many parents that they decide to withdraw their child from the school district of Philadelphia and enroll them in to charter schools, which is feasible, which is something that really might happen. So because there are a lot of factors, I just don't think that the PFT is going to go on strike. But if, let's just say if, a big if the majority of school district of Philadelphia teachers decide that they are going to support the PFT, if the PFT decides to go on strike, schools are going to shut down, because there aren't that many substitutes in the world to mitigate the damage that will be caused by teachers and members of the PFT going on strike. So if that is to happen, if the PFT does go on strike and the majority of teachers decide to support the PFT, there won't be any school. But I don't know if that will happen if CASA decides to go on strike. CASA is the Commonwealth Association of School Administrators. They represent School District of Philadelphia, school police officers, principals, assistant principals, and I believe climate and culture people in the School District of Philadelphia schools. So these people have very important jobs. Of course, they are the managers and the leaders of schools in the school district. But you also have to look at 440 North Broad Street, the Constance E. Clayton building, as they refer to it now. And that building is full of chiefs and directors and managers and all those types of people who used to be School District of Philadelphia administrators or administrators in other areas. And so if those individuals, especially individuals who have current active leadership administrative credentials, if you have enough of those people, enough assistant superintendents, enough deputy superintendents to cover the schools, I don't know if the district will shut down if CASA goes on strike, because they might have enough staff members at 440 and other places to cover those positions until the strike ends. Now, will those people be able to operate schools as efficiently as the people who are responsible for operating those schools? Absolutely not. But again, I don't think CASA is going to go on strike. I don't think the PFT is going to go on strike. Um, uh, I would hope that those two organizations operate with the best interest of the children in mind. You have to understand that when DC 33 and members of that union decide to go on strike, DC 33 represents people in many sectors in Philadelphia, right? The medical examiner's office, people, 911 dispatchers, people at the airport, as well as people in waste management, different people, right? But the PFC in the school district of Philadelphia, if the PFC goes on strike, who who suffers? Children, right? DC 33 members going on strike, and I'm not trying to diminish the importance of any of those positions, but I'm saying if DC 33, maybe we can take trash piling up for a week. Maybe we can take trash piling up for 2 weeks. Maybe we can take some sort of slowness happening in other areas, maybe at the airport. Maybe they need to rethink some things as it relates to 911 dispatchers. As a matter of fact, check your emergency notifications, because there seems to be a 911 outage throughout the state of Pennsylvania currently. But what I'm saying is that I feel like if teachers go on strike, it will have a greater impact, because they are charged with taking care of children. And it's not like the district is going to add on weeks if the PFT goes on strike. They go on strike for 2 weeks, 3 weeks. Guess what? Your child is missing 2 weeks, 3 weeks of education that won't be added on. They're not going to catch it on the back end. That's just going to be stuff that they're missing. So I kind of feel like the stakes are a little bit higher when it comes to our teachers and making sure that our children are educated and taken care of. But again, I hope and I pray that those two unions don't go on strike, and I don't believe that they will. All right, moving on to some national news. Um, Unfortunately, there is someone who leads this country who I really wish wasn't leading our country. Like I when I was on WURD last week, and I was talking about Trump and just the impact of what they're doing to Medicare and SNAP and a lot of these programs that help people who need financial support. Um, a song by The Roots comes to mind. And Tariq Trotter starts it off by saying, "Before it all comes together, things fall apart." And I believe that we are in the falling apart stage, right? And hopefully things will come together. But a part of that falling apart stage is the Trump administration withholding more than $230 million of federal funding from Pennsylvania's education. You know, we rely, I believe the 13% of the school district of Philadelphia, or perhaps the state's education budget, 13% comes from the federal government. Just in terms of impact, how it relates or how it compares with other states in our country, there are only 5 more states in the nation that will that whose funding is greater, right? Whose funding withholdness, if you will, I know that's not a word, will be greater than Pennsylvania's, and that is California, Texas, New York, Florida, and Illinois. So we are, out of the nation, we are the 6th most impacted by the Trump's administration's decision to withhold federal funding. And listen, and just right on par with Trump and his minions. Look at the programs that will be impacted the most. Or I should say, listen, because y'all can't see it, I can. Title One, which is Title 1C, migrant education programs. Just interestingly enough, I met this beautiful person maybe a few months ago at a professional development, and her job was federally funded, and her job was to educate families who are a part of the I don't remember the name of they're migrant workers. There you go, the word is right there. And so they travel from place to place to place depending on the seasons, and they do whatever is necessary as it relates to the season in that specific area. And their job, this lady that I was speaking to, is specifically to reach out to those people and give them specific resources. But this is how she receives the funding. This is how her organization receives the funding through the federal government. And Trump is withholding $11 million from migrant education programs. He is withholding $70 million from Title II-A. That is teacher training. They specifically refer to it as supporting effective instruction. That is teacher professional development. And let me tell y'all something. There are some places in education where you might be able to trim the fat. I'm not sure, but I promise you, one area where you can't trim the fat in education is professional development for teachers. And this is definitely a conversation that needs to involve many people, including the state level, people on the state level, people in charge of certifications, and people who are in charge of the curriculum at local area colleges and universities, not specifically in Pennsylvania, but throughout the nation. And why am I bringing that point up? Because teachers, for the most part, are leaving these universities without the ability to teach. Teachers are leaving these universities with certifications in education, math, literacy, whatever their certification is, but they're leaving without the ability to teach, right? Because you really don't learn how to teach as a part of your teaching program. You learn a lot of theory. You might get 6 months of practice, but you don't really learn what to do in the classroom when you have 25, 30. You don't learn that. Some of that stuff comes from experience, but I do believe that universities can help mitigate some of that damage by improving their program for teachers when they are studying education before they get their certification. However, the federal government just erased $70 million from that professional development budget. English language acquisition, 20 million. Is it any surprise that Trump and his minions are coming for programs that help individuals in this country who are not I don't know what you want to call it, but who are not documented citizens. 21st century community learning centers, $54 million is at risk, or not at risk, is being withheld from the state of Pennsylvania. Adult education basic grants to the state, $20 million. Now, how does this specifically impact Philadelphia, especially with that $20 million? 52% of the residents in our beautiful state are functionally illiterate. 52% of the residents in Philadelphia are functionally illiterate, not in the state, it's specifically in the city of Philadelphia. So if we are taking $20 million statewide from adult education basic grants, you are taking funding away from these programs that help your citizens become literate, that help the residents of Philadelphia become literate. Literate, and it's a struggle as it is, right? It's a struggle. As somebody who helps parents navigate the educational landscape in Philadelphia, I can tell you that one of the biggest obstacles to children learning how to read is their parents being illiterate. I am so sorry. I don't even know how to say that in a nicer way, but I think that you can't sugarcoat it, because in order to get help, we really need to be explicit with what the issue is. And the issue is that a lot of parents, a lot of adults in the city of Philadelphia don't have the proper literacy skills or foundational math skills to even help their child with homework. Their child might be in kindergarten, first grade, or second grade. They don't have the foundational math skills to do their own bills at the end of the month, which is why a lot of times they fall behind. So if we are taking money away from the individuals who need it the most, where's the supplement going to come from? How are we going to mitigate that damage? Where's the extra money going to come from? Because we don't have it on the state level. We can't give $20 million from the state education budget for this specific program, which is why we get it from the federal government. So I just ask for you all to lean on your representatives that go down there in Washington, D.C. to advocate on your behalf. I'm specifically talking about Mary Gay Scanlon and Dwight Evans, because we all know that, Fetterman seems to be compromised. So I don't even know if it's worth calling him. May God bless his heart. All right. So some of the other things that I was talking about on WURD that I will review for you all for the next, I guess maybe 15 minutes or so
Well,
is
actually, here, Dan, will be the next 4, 5, actually 5
oh,
minutes.
all
5 minutes.
right.
And I'm so glad you said the time, because I didn't want to interrupt you as you got to it. But yeah,
Uh-huh.
we have about 4 minutes.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Well, no, Dana, I'm actually taking notes, so don't be sorry. This is some good stuff, but we do have to wrap it up at in about 4 minutes. But I want folks to know that they can continue to listen to Dana Carter not only every Saturday on WRD 96.1 FM at about 2:20, but tonight we're going to have Dana Carter on WRD at about 6:25 p.m. So, Dana, the final 4 minutes are yours.
I listen, I am horrible with tracking time, but on WURD, I usually can track the time based on the commercial breaks. Here, I'm just talking, right? And so I'm way over, because I'm thinking have about 10, 15 minutes left, and it's almost time to wrap up. All right. So hopefully I'll be able to come back on to the Philly
Yes.
to this specific audience
Yes.
to give you all some of the information that I'm not going to be able to get to today. But very quickly, before I go, I'm going to try to squeeze these 10 or 11 minutes into 180 seconds. All right. So Dr. Watlington, who is the superintendent of the school district of Philadelphia, is looking to eliminate grade bands in the school district of Philadelphia. And by grade bands, what I mean is that typically when we talk about sections in the school district of Philadelphia or grades, we speak of pre-K to 4, or maybe K to 3, and then we do maybe 4 to 8 or 5 to 8, right, being the middle school, and then we do 9 to 12 being high school. So what Dr. Watlington is saying is that pre-K to 8th grade should ultimately be one grade band, Why? Because you have children who go to a specific school and they might go to one school for pre-K, right? Then they go to another school from K to 4 or K to 5. Then they go to another school for 6, 7, and 8. And then they go to another school for high school. And what the research says is that that particular model does not improve outcomes for children. The research says that those children might fare better with fewer transitions, or they fare exactly the same. It's the exact same academic outcome they will get if they stayed at the K to 8 school or if they transition. Long story short, it's not worth it to have children go from one school for this particular grade, then go to another school, then go to another school. So he is saying he might eliminate the middle schools. Does this mean closing those schools down? No, it means changing those schools from 6, 7, and 8th grade schools to K to 8 schools. And it is very beneficial. I remember when I was in school, when I entered that public school in 3rd grade, the teachers who were the 8th grade teachers when I was in 3rd grade were the 8th grade teachers when I got to 8th grade. So it definitely creates a sense of community. It creates a sense of connection between the parents and the teachers. When you know who your child's teacher is going to be in the coming years, when you see that teachers really love the school and they don't leave, when your child is able to maintain that same friends group or that same group from grade to grade to grade. My niece just graduated from 8th grade, and those children who were in her pre-K program at that particular school were the same ones who graduated with her in the 8th grade. And then many of them are going to go to the same high school. Now, that's a private school, it's a Catholic school, but that is actually my experience that I had when I was in school too. So I know from personal experience that is definitely a benefit for children to stay in that same school, especially if it's a school where the parents are pleased with the programs and the teachers and the administration and the leadership of that particular school. It is to your benefit to stay in that school, because you might go to another school and sometimes it's like rolling the dice. You never know what you're going to get. So Dr. Watlington, in the coming years, it appears, is going to move towards eliminating those grade bands within the elementary level and just making those schools K to 8 schools. And I think generally that will improve the outcomes for children who are amongst the groups who have been historically underserved in the school district of Philadelphia. All right, is it time for me
And
to go, Mr. Court?
And folks who have tuned in for the first time here on TV Courtroom to hear and see Dana, I'm sure you were blown away, because she always does this, provide powerful information. Dana, we got 30 seconds left. I just want to remind folks, if you want to hear more of Dana tonight and see more of Dana tonight, check out WURD 96.1 FM, WURD 900 AM. And we're also on Facebook, so you can hear more of what she's talking about tonight around 6:25 and tomorrow, Saturday, at about 2:20. And our final 30 seconds, Dana. One, tell us how folks can contact you. But two, most important, what's up with that T-shirt? Talk about it.
I'm a proud, I'm so black. You hear that little scream? That was such a black woman scream that I just did. I am a proud graduate and member of the 239th class of the Philadelphia High School for Girls. So one of my classmates, Shamika, who I saw a few weeks ago, made this shirt for me. Girls High John 239. That's my graduating class. Shout out to all my Girls High girls.
And final 10 seconds, how can folks follow you, contact you?
Email attack atac.avengingtheancestors@gmail.com.
Great stuff, and we look forward to having you back on this show and seeing and hearing you on WRD. I'm going to end today's show like I end every show. First, I got to thank our producer/engineer, Roland, for doing such a great job, and I'll end it like this. Think Black, I'm out.